Okay, guys, this is going to be game 3 and the final game of the Telecom War series between SKT and KT. So right now the series is tied 1-1. In both games, KT came out with extremely aggressive lanes. They looked to get ahead of SKTelecom. In game number 1, it didn't really go that way. And they dropped the ball in a lot of areas. In game number 2, though, it looked like they were going to drop the ball yet again, but then they picked everything up and they were able to overthrow SKTelecom, who made it a very difficult fight, though, nonetheless. And as the game drew on, it did look like very clearly that SKTelecom were much more adept at the mid to late game transition, and they understood, at least in the defensive way, how to play out the macro game from that standpoint. And so let's go into game number 3. Okay, first ban Malzahar yet again from Wolf's red side. Varus getting banned away by SKTelecom yet again. Karma now being banned away by KT. This directly attacks the Ezreal Karma lane, but also all the options and utility that Karma grants. LeBlanc now being banned away by SKTelecom. Don't want to give that over to Pawn. See what the final ban is if you're KT. They ban away Camille. And Camille is one of the few champions still that can be ultra aggressive and highly flexible. Now the problem is that Jace has not been banned. And we know that that's something that KT would be able to flex, not only to top, but also mid. We're talking about the teleport deft Jace game. No, I'm kidding about that, but Jace first pick makes the most sense here, especially with how they've been stylistically playing throughout the night. Okay, so they respond Rengar Rumble. Don't like that. It's a red side Graves. But Blank has been swapped in. So Blank, usually he takes on the supportive role. He's like a less mechanical Peanut, but he's much more supportive. He's like Bengi if he had mechanics. At least now that's his role in the team. Bengi was even more supportive than Blank was, but now Blank takes on that role. So now it looks like KT picking up the Ashe. This will give them pick potential, and it'll also shut down the Jhin pick if SKTelecom would want to take it, or it shuts down the Caitlyn pick. But we've also already seen again that SKTelecom like to opt into that Ezreal, Bang being one of the best Ezreal players in the world. Now, so if you're KT, you probably just pick the support here. You don't need, or not the support, the jungle. Yeah, there's the Graves. Because you don't want to go into the second ban phase and they ban away Graves. You don't want them to ban Graves Elise and then you're on Kha'Zix, and that's just a feels bad man moment, because then you have Jace, Kha'Zix, Ashe, and without Karma, I mean, you're going to be a little bit limited in some ways of how to deal with the opposing team composition when they have so many gears available to them with the Rengar and with the Rumble. Looks like they are highlighting the Jhin. Does get locked in. And what this does is, with the Jhin and the Rumble already, they're setting up a lot of long-range engage with Rengar that enables their carries to remain safe, while Blank then goes in, and he can even build semi-tanky because of the damage output that's going to come from Jhin and Rumble. So now Kennen gets banned away. I don't understand the Kennen ban at all. Doesn't make any sense. Literally makes no sense. Even if KT were to put Kennen up in top lane, that would funnel them into a highly aggressive coin flippy playstyle. I mean, they put themselves on a clock. SKTelecom doesn't even need to draft anything in particular against it, if it's going to be the on-hit Kennen. They ban away the Rise from Faker. So they're not going to have the luxury of having the Rumble Jhin Rise for that super scaling. And now Nautilus gets banned away. So they're saying that they think that Pawn is going to be on the Jace. But not only that, is they want to take away the magic damage source from top lane. You notice that what they're doing is they're trying to directly attack AP magic damage champions so that they can try to force Smeb into a much more specific matchup. Wolf locks in the Tahm Kench to act as a counter to the Graves burst all in, the Ash Arrow, any other picks that they would attempt to pick up with their support and top lane pick or the support and mid pick. The Zyra pick would be a pretty bad choice, and that's because SKTelecom's engagement is mostly done from long range. Yep, the Braum is really good. Braum is good against the Tahm Kench and against the Rengar. And it looks like Gragas is coming out, so that's going to be the top lane Gragas. And this can be intentional from SKTelecom as because what other AP top laners are remaining? Maokai banned, Kennen banned, Nautilus banned, Rumble already picked. What other AP top lane champs are remaining that are in the current meta? Nothing except for Gragas. Gragas, and then obviously less potent top laners like Tahm Kench and whatever. But that's not a champion that you're going to want to be picking. So, all right. So right off the bat, before we hop into the game really quickly, we're going to talk about a few dynamics. So let me just let them get the champions in the right order so I can draw. Okay. So up in top lane, Rumble has control of the lane, but only to a certain degree. Smeb has complete dictatorship on exactly how the lane is going to go, levels 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then obviously through on out, he'll have control over that. Even though it is going to be a blue side Graves, the problem is that because Smeb has control of how the lane can play out, he can actually synergize with Score in what otherwise would be a very difficult lane to synergize with for a blue side Graves. In addition to that, in mid lane, Jace is going to have the edge up onto Zed, and any sort of counter gank or match gank is going to end up proving to be really, really, really good for KT. Any proactive gank by KT is going to be able to likely be dissuaded, they're going to be able to dissuade SKTelecom from trying to take the 2v2, because a proactive gank is going to be extremely difficult for SKT to shut down, because it's going to mean that the Shadow gets used defensively, Bullish Strike gets used defensively. SKTelecom don't really have the ability to turn that around, at least not until level 6 or something, because then we're entertaining Zed's ultimate and Rengar's ultimate on the hunt. In the later stages of the game, and also in bottom lane, if bottom lane dictates the pace to be defensive and play on their half of the lane in front of their turret by a few inches, or if they keep it in the very middle of the lane, Graves is going to have more power than Rengar, assuming that Blasting Plant isn't available, and then depending on what the levels are in the game. Obviously, bottom lane is also going to have a much stronger level 6 than SKTelecom's, and so yet again, KT pick this type of lineup that is meant to just pulverize and squash the opponents and grant them a lot of gears in the early stages of the game. The problem is, though, or for SKTelecom, is that they don't have the luxury of the hyperscaling anymore. But they do have the Zed, but the problem is that it's the red side Zed. So we already talked about how you can't really make use of the 1-3-1 up in top lane, assuming that the top tier 2 turret is still living, because Zed versus Gragas in the side lane push is not going to be that good. Also, with the amount of physical damage coming out, yes, Rumble does a lot, but it also enables Graves to itemize in a very specific way that he would otherwise not be able to get away with if he chooses to do that, depending on leads that KT can end up obtaining. Okay. So now let's get into the game. So they're fanning out. It would be a lot more risky for SKTelecom to try to move into KT, and that's primarily because of the Braum, but also because of the Gragas. And then on top of that, the level 1 of Jace is going to be vastly superior to that of the level 1 of Faker. But if KT tried to move into SKTelecom, depending on where they're doing it, they can actually find themselves advantages as long as they're not moving into the lane that has the Rengar, or wherever Rengar would end up being. But it looks like, sorry, let me just make sure that did not mute my microphone. Okay, it did not mute my microphone. Okay, we're good. All right, Infernal Drake is the first dragon of the game that's spawning, so we can actually talk about that a little bit as well. So basically, right now, one of the things that they have available to them in bottom lane, if you're looking at SKTelecom, okay, because they have to somehow find a way to accelerate in the mid lane. The Zed needs to find a way to go off because he's at too much of a disadvantage the longer that the game goes on against the composition that KT has drafted. One of the things that they can do earlier on is they can enable the lane to get pushed into them, and then if Blank does start on the Raptor camp, Blank can go boom, boom, over to blue, blue, boom, 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 gank, relieve pressure, gromp into wolves, into recall, set up, come down to golems. After you do golems, you move like this, give your top laner a ward, eat scuttle crab, relieve pressure mid lane, transition back into the right hand side. It's a very defensive manner. It creates even pressure across the map, and it directly does attack Graves' route in a very certain in a very specific way that would end up making Graves then play to his weak side at a point where he wouldn't want to play, relative to, again, the levels. And here's that Rengar, actually. Blank actually smites for the HP, but not just the HP. Obviously, he's going to stick around to do the camp. Pawn, no exhaust and no flash, and you can see that Score, knowing that Blank started on Raptors, it's unlikely that he's going to immediately come over to his blue buff, so he's taking this opportunity to steal away the blue buff. It's not the end of the world. And now Blank actually has some options available to him. He can actually do the red buff, and then if he would want to, he can then actually move into the blue side jungle, check on it to see if Score came over to the blue side jungle. He would technically fall behind in tempo, but it would give information to his teammates, which desperately need it up in top and mid lane right now because of how that level 1 trade unfolded. It would be a higher variance play though, so it's not something that you want to do unless absolutely necessary, especially because he's also missing a lot of HP because of how the start panned out. You can see that Score intelligently playing a very heavy counter jungle style. And now you see the position of bottom lane, and you imagine if Blank had his blue side jungle up, what this could mean for KT. Score is not going to be able to get the Gromp. It is resetting, though, and now Blank is going to go up, and he's going to find that there's no wolves, and now Score is massively far ahead of Blank. And the problem with, this isn't just him getting ahead of Blank here. Now we can transition into his side of the jungle. He knows that he's deflected Blank's ability to go like this and create any sort of pressure in bottom lane. Now, what Score could do is he can come here, blasting plant over to golems, eat red, transition into his left side jungle, and he just ends up fucking Blank, because now Blank has to go like this to potentially checking scuttle up to golems. Just a really, really, really rough route. Because even though you would want to make use of something in the mid lane, given the fact that Pawn doesn't have exhaust and flash available to him, you can't really do it at this point in the game because Zed is only going to be level 3 or level 4, and you're going to be way too weak to really threaten anything. Even if you would land the Bola. You can see he doesn't even bother to check on the Scuttle Crab. He just head immediately up to top lane. But SKTelecom, they might know, they might have an idea that KT knows exactly where Blank can go right now. And the only real saving grace is up in that top lane, but this is now getting around the point where I said that Smeb would have dictatorship on how to play out the lane. So now if Score moves up into top lane, and normally that's going to be the side of the jungle that is going to be disadvantageous to a blue side Graves, it could end up causing problems up in top lane. They actually do spot out Score Mata running up from bottom lane because they had such control in bottom, and Ashe was actually recalling early. I like what Huni and Blank did, but this was read by KT perfectly. And this was actually read from the moment that Blank was actually in his blue side jungle. And Blank ends up taking a pretty high variance play to try to go into the blue side jungle and get something done to try to recover some of the loss that Score put onto him. And now you can see that things are just getting really, really bad, and this is the exact type of snowball that KT's team composition needs, and it's a lot worse this time around because Faker is on that Zed pick. Pressure relief in top lane. And you can see that now Blank is forced to go back to the side of the map where Score is going to outpace him. And it's just a really, really rough spot right now for him to be in. SKTelecom are so far behind. It almost looked like... Okay, never mind. Mata looking for any sort of vision control because he knows that down in bottom lane, Deft is relatively safe. Also important to note that Deft picked up the boots so that he's going to have a much easier time in the 1v2 if the lane is pushed up. And you can see what Huni is doing right now. He has control over whether the lane is going to push or if it's going to lock. And that's just something that, or not Huni, Smeb has control over the lane if it's going to push or if it's going to lock, depending on how he wants to use his barrels. And so because of that, it actually puts Huni under a lot of pressure. Faker has level 6, Pawn's level 5. Blank came in, he got some intel for his team. And so KT, they can't drop the ball. They really need to keep up the pressure. Now you can see that score is actually moving up. And this is something that normally Graves would not really be able to do on blue side. At least not commonly. Now they're both moving in. They know that Huni doesn't have flash available to him. And if Huni ends up going down here, you can keep Smeb and score up in top lane. SKTelecom would be able to respond with Infernal Drake. Nice. SKT could potentially respond with Infernal Drake, but you see that Blank is out of position. And if SKTelecom were going to respond with Infernal Drake, look at the ward coverage that they have right now. So it would actually be a little easy for Deft, Mata, and Pawn to stall the Infernal Drake, or they would be able to make it so that it's not worthwhile for SKTelecom, because they have the proper vision control that would punish Blank. So now they shove in another wave up in top lane. Score is at an enormous advantage. I really like the fact that Deft went tier 2 boots. This opens up Mata's ability to roam more, but also the Berserker Greaves if SKTelecom make a pretty big mistake. Just the mobility that Deft is going to be able to have with roams to mid lane, with his Enchanted Crystal Arrow, etc. is obviously going to be enhanced. And just like whatever they need him for is going to be greatly enhanced right now. And I really, really like what KT is actually doing to SKTelecom. You can see that they're waiting for Bang. Score thinking he's on top of a ward. Ends up leaving. Really unfortunate. They could have just potentially killed, they could have killed Bang, but you can see the Bang's aware of it. Staying one step ahead. And now Score is actually going to turn his sight to the Infernal Drake because they know that they have initiative in mid lane. You see that Smeb has control over top lane. He's being shoved underneath his turret. It's going to be extremely unlikely that Blank's going to be able to go up there. But then also, because bottom lane has initiative, this is all too easy for Score to actually pick up the Infernal Drake, which is gigantic for a Graves, Ashe, and Jace. SKT are so far behind. See that Pawn has the blue buff now. Faker trying to get some poke off onto him, not really able to find anything. Even ends up getting zoned out of some CS because the shurikens were thrown a little bit too early. Not going to matter so much. You see Smeb is now shoving in the top lane because he knows that Score is not going to be on that side of the map for the foreseeable future. And so he doesn't want the lane to be in a position where he's getting zoned out of CS, and it opens up the opportunity for Blink to come up to top lane. Now you can see that Smeb is actually going down to mid lane potentially. And they might even look for a play onto Faker. Never mind, he ends up realizing that he's on top of a ward. And now he goes back up to top lane. Hey Reddit, you don't need top tier 1 power down to make these plays. Alright. So now you can see Huni now looking for anything as he shoved the wave in. This is just really good proactivity from the top laners right here. They're looking to maximize their efficiency on the map. Although Huni, not in the same exact situation as KT is. Oh my god. That was just really, really unfortunate for KT. Faker ends up getting away though. And that's something that obviously KT, that should not have happened. Mata rotates up, but you can see now that Bang is going to miss out on a lot of CS that Deft's going to be able to get. Now Pawn and Smeb are going to share XP. They're going to get First Blood turret on that Ashe. Not the best champion that they could have gotten it on. Obviously, it would have been much better on like Pawn or even Smeb because of SKTelecom's team composition. Teleport coming in, teleport matched by Smeb to try to dissuade the teleport play. They know that the Abyssal Voyage isn't up, so they don't have to worry about that too much. Now Deft is obviously going to stay in bottom because it's impossible for SKTelecom to have any member in a position that would actually threaten him. Mata comes down to bottom because Deft and Mata obviously want to get the First Blood turret. You can see that Faker's trying to race down. Really greedy by KT right here, though, to get this. This is not necessary. Now this is a point where, you know, you're wasting time. Take a quick look at the replay. I don't really need to see it that much. Obviously, they messed up mechanically a little bit. But this is a situation where you don't need to shove this wave because your team composition is intended to out-blitz the opponent. And if you shove this wave into the opponent, then what ends up happening is you give them this wave and then you give them an incoming wave and it enables them to lock it. And if they're going to lock it, it's not just locking it, it's unlocking a Tahm Kench to be mid lane now, which then can support top and bottom simultaneously with the Abyssal Voyage in the future, and it enables Bang to actually catch up in what should have been Deft's ability to get a sizable CS lead, but we can clearly see that that's not the case. What it would end up doing is Deft and Mata at this point in the game, because they know the fact that Huni doesn't have flash and teleport available to him, they can rotate up to top lane because they know Infernal Drink is not here, and then they can have Smeb go down into bottom lane and match Bang in the 1v1. Alternatively, you could actually have Deft and Mata go into mid lane first with Jay's play around the blue buff, push out Faker using the blue buff mana excessively to take away Faker's HP. You force Blank to come into mid lane with Wolf. After that, then you rotate your bottom lane up to top lane with your top laner shoving in the enemy top laner, and then you force him off the turret, you get the top tier 2 turret, and then you have the top laner go down to bottom lane, and then you have the bottom lane end up backing up, recalling, and then going up mid lane. So there's a lot of potential macro options that can be played off of right now, and Deft and Mata are actually dropping the ball on this lane shove. Even if they end up getting a kill, it's not important as the tempo around the map. They get a kill onto Wolf. Score taking it a little bit further. And now what it's doing is Pawn is in mid lane with that blue buff, but he ends up getting hit by the curtain call. I don't think that... Yeah, okay. Fucking Michael Jackson. Oh my god! He almost actually killed Huni. Holy shit. Jace, nice champ. Okay. So Pawn, I don't think Pawn needed to actually handshake that. I'm pretty sure that Pawn could have used the exhaust to get away if he wanted to, because Smeb was going to be getting the turret up in top lane. But this is just KT actually making macro mistakes. There's nothing else to really say about it. They're just making macro mistakes. They got the kill, but we already established that the kill isn't as worthwhile as the other things that they could have done. Okay, so now the other problem with Pawn going down is that you lose the blue buff as well, which could have been used as a tool to force Faker out of mid lane and force Blank and Wolf to come into mid lane. Then you enable them to rotate up to top lane. And I can already fucking see Reddit saying, but then you can just Abyssal Voyage them top lane. No, you can't. So you get top tier 1 turret, and then again, you do the rotation that I talked about before. Faker, though, extending a little bit too far off into the side lane, managed to actually juke the ultimate by Mata. And that was really good. That was extremely dangerous. He did have flash available, but it's not a situation that you want to be blowing summoners in order to get away from. He ends up actually staying because he thinks that they don't have any vision control over them, but even if he stays, he doesn't have his ultimate anymore, and he also doesn't even have Ignite available, so it's not like he's actually going to be able to kill anything. No, Pavlok! Change your habits, change your life. God, there's a few NALCS teams that probably need you, Pavlok. Alright. Oh, man. Bang's being locked up in mid lane. It's not the end of the world because Bang with the curtain call, you do want to be able to rotate him up to bottom or top, depending on how you want to make use of the curtain call. Next Dragon Go coming up in a minute. It's Mountain Drake. I see it at the bottom right. That's actually really bad. So SKTelecom are not in a position to get this Mountain Drake, and it's even worse because their wave clear is heavily reliant on an equalizer, so the Mountain Drake is going to enable KT, especially with all their range champions, to really shred turrets that much quicker, and they're going to have a few more gears available to them that they didn't have before. It also opens up the ability to go for the 20-minute Baron as well with their team composition. You can see this map is just basically looking around for anything. I really like the fact that Score itemizes into Ninja Tabby, second item. Smeb, though, with the Spirit Visage, not entirely sure that's the best of choices. I think he could have just stayed on the Spectre's Cowl, and then have the Spectre's Cowl and then go into like a hybrid type stat or something, or just get your tier 2 boots sooner. Don't really totally agree with that itemization, but it's not the end of the world. Or you could have even gone Spectre's Cowl. No, yeah, just Spectre's Cowl, yeah. Because you're not actually really fighting Huni that much. We've already seen that. We've already established that. And so if the mid-game team fights are going to break out around 15 to 18 minutes, you should actually just have the armor stat on you rather than the magic resistance. Even though the Spirit Visage obviously does amplify his healing, I don't think that's as important unless there's some sort of math where the healing that would be amplified from Spirit Visage would actually be more than the health saved by having armor. That would be an interesting thing, I guess, to look at. And in addition to the cooldown reduction. So actually, I'm going to reserve my comment, and I'm going to take back what I said about that on Smeb, because I will concede that I don't currently have the knowledge of that stuff to make a analytical remark on it. But it's something I can definitely look into. And so that gets shut down pretty bad, and now Deft is obviously trying to take this a little bit further onto Blank. They do catch him right there. Curtain Call comes out, Faker goes back in for the flank, and this is just KT being quite moronic yet again. They're taking things way too aggressively. You look up at top lane, there's nothing that, like, let's take a look at this, okay? Let's take a look at this from a macro perspective. All right, so you hit Blank. Mana mispositions his ult, otherwise they would probably actually potentially get Blank as well. You have Deft coming down. Now, what I want you to look at right now is I want you to look at mid lane, and I want you to look up at top lane, and I want you to look at where Score is, okay? So when you flash and do the volley onto Blank, you must also entertain the fact that Bang is not in mid, which means that Bang has to be en route, which means that Bang has Curtain Call available to him. So then you flash onto Blank, you also have to entertain that Huni has his teleport available to him. What you could have done here is you have Graves get the red, and then Graves either go up to top lane, push this wave, push another wave, that's a kill in itself, or you have Graves get the blue buff, and then you have Graves move into mid lane, push the wave into the turret, and then counter jungle Blank. That's a kill in itself in terms of gold efficiency. All at the cost of not having to blow your flash, get a kill onto Blank, because you've already secured the dragon anyway. As long as Score actually would kill the blue, go down to mid, eat mid, and then unite with you inside of river. Blank does not really have the HP available, Faker does not have his ultimate, doesn't have ignite available to him, and Wolf is actually dead. And even though Huni does have teleport, and he's going to probably keep pushing up on top to top, you can then go up to river and then unite with Graves, draw them to mid turret, and then move back into the river and force them to come to you. So KT making another macro blunder, and they get punished for it. So we'll just skip ahead. Score now gets a lot of farm up in top lane. Actually delaying Faker's recall, and that may seem really small, but it's not. The cooldown on the ultimate is not that worthwhile. That's the replay. We don't need to look at the replay. SKTelecom still behind, quite considerably, although they were more behind earlier. Don't take the fight, don't take the fight. Have Score come up here, have Mata zone out, and then get the turret. And then after you get the turret, or if you don't get the turret because somehow they find a way in via, well, they don't have Curtain Call. Let's say that you don't get the turret, then you just move down after you end up eating the minion wave, so you guarantee that they don't have any minions available for their team to push onto your mid-tier 1 turret. Move down into the Mountain Drake, eat the Mountain Drake, move out through the bottom half of the map, eat your golems if you're Score, and then you send the 80 carry, which is either going to be Deft, or you can actually even send Pawn to eat the minion wave that are going to be pulling up around here, even if they then wait for the incoming minion wave that is going to be leaving the Nexus, etc., to then try to begin an assault on the mid-tier 1 turret. That doesn't really matter. You have Huni concede top tier 2, and then you have Huni move through the jungle, and you have him get to mid. This is all stuff that KT, with the vision that they currently have, can make the decision on. And I'm not seeing anything better from a macro standpoint. These are just patterns. These are pattern recognitions. Oh, wait, what? Wait. Wait, mid-tier 1's already... Wait. When did mid-tier 1 die? The fuck, replay? Alright, whatever. Mid-tier 1 is actually dead. In that case, you shove them up to tier 2, and then you do the loop-de-loop, because then it also grants you the wolves. Even better. An even better rotation, to be honest. So, I was actually talking about something that wasn't as good as something that they can do right here. No, yeah, let's just coin flip that fight. That's great. Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Imagine if Mata was already here. Imagine if Mata was already here and Pawn was already up here hitting the turret. Imagine if Deft wasn't wasting his time with the volleys. Imagine if Deft shoots a hawk shot or something and just follows them in addition to these two wards. Imagine if Deft and Pawn are right here hitting this turret, okay, with the, Mata standing right here. And then, to top it off, let's say that, oh, God. Let's say that you also have score, right here with Mata, right? Damage the turret, you move around like this, you get their wolves, you clear out vision control, you move down to Mountain Drake, you eat Mountain Drake, you send score down to eat golems, you send Pawn or Deft to eat the wave, and then you have Smeb move down into mid lane to stop their counter push, because you want to concede top tier 1 turret so that you can use it as a funnel for gold. Oh. Okay. What time is it? I have 30 minutes. Okay, so they have Faker in the side lane pushing out. KT dropped the ball on some macro transitions. So they're consistently obliterating SKTelecom in the early game. They're consistently doing that, and then they're dropping the ball with the transition. Last game, they didn't drop it, but the game before they did. And this game, yet again, they're dropping it. I like that score is going into Black Cleaver because they have a lot of physical damage. This is all going to further amplify Pawn, who's going to be able to go Yumu's into Edge of Night. Like the fact also that Pawn is going tier, so they have more ammo when they want to begin sieging. So now score comes into the dragon pit. What are you guys doing? Just get the dragon. Just get the dragon. What are you doing? Why? 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 Huh? Why? Why, KT? Why? Give me a reason. You can't. Fucking can't spell. Well, Jesus. Fuck. Really, really, really pathetic. Now Pawn overextending. We're gonna get back to it. The point is, this is such a gross and unacceptable level elementary macro blunder from a team of this level. Absolutely inexcusable. We've already established that SKTelecom do not have the luxury of the scaling, in terms of Faker right now. There's an absolutely zero reason for KT to be playing the way that they are right now. Easily just shred the Mountain Drake, take bottom lane, fix mid lane, take your own jungle, right? Look at top lane. That's pulling up. Right? Get all of that. Get all those resources. You're not under any obligation to fight right now. SKTelecom needs you to fight. SKT needs to take a team fight. SKT are doing what they need to do. But they shouldn't have a say in it, is the point. This is actually KT making gigantic blunders. Oh. Huge blunders. Okay, they finally get Mountain Drake. Bottom lane is pushing. So now if you're KT, what you do is you don't have teleport on Smeb. So now as 4, you have them push up mid lane, break, and then unite with Pawn down in bottom. And you pull them away from the left-hand side of the map. You hold out that stall for a little bit until whenever you deem necessary, because what it's going to end up doing is it's going to create a dead lane up in top, and then mid lane is irrelevant anyway. You back up and back. This then forces them to shove a wave into you in mid. You then move up, you eat your own side of the jungle, and then you transition into the left-hand side of the map, which you just drew them exactly away from. If you're SKTelecom, so a lot of people might be watching this and wondering, why am I not talking about what SKT can do? It's because they don't have a say in the matter if KT are doing these things. There's nothing that SKTelecom can do if KT are doing this. And I think that this is something that I happen to do when I'm casting that some people fail to realize. I don't talk about one team, right? Because sometimes people say that I have a bias towards the team. Sometimes it's what can one team do and what they can't do, because the other team doesn't actually have a say, assuming the highest levels of play. KT takes a very coin flippy team fight, and now they're gonna lose a lot of stuff for it. Look at this, 2 beautiful waves now that they have waiting for them. Nice juicy kill up in top, nice juicy kill up in bottom, and be able to eat their Gromp. Should be able to get mid tier 1 turret here. Lots of victories for SKTelecom now, because KT wanted to they wanted to flip a coin. And then on top of that, you know, the mistakes that KT are making, it's even worse because of the shutdown golds, but then also because of rubber banding. Yep, really beautiful by SKT. Nice, nice, nice recovery. And now you can see that KT is going to do what they should have been doing anyway, except they're doing it after they lap their wounds. All right, we're not going to watch the replay. Oh boy, another coin flip. All right, what's going on here? Smeb up in top lane, has teleport. Deft, score, what are you doing? Huh? Wait a minute, hold on. You have a 1-3-1 team composition in the sense that Zed can actually go to match Pawn at this point in the game, right? He can do that, right? But there's no reason to look for these type of team fights when you can just, you can twist and pull at the map, because the only member on SKT that has any sort of a say right now is actually Faker. It looks like Huni might have a say because he's 5, 3, and 4, but he really doesn't, because everything that he has to do is use defensively. Why KT is doing this instead of just zoning them out and escorting up mid lane and then breaking back through Baron to control this area is a little bit beyond me. Pawn doesn't die. That's a feels bad man moment. Oh! Oh! There was no reason for Wolf to still be there. So these are lots of mistakes. Yes, it's a really fun game because their team fighting is still extremely on point, right? But there's no denying that KT is making a ton of blunders. And again, the onus is on KT to do stuff. The onus is on KT to be proactive. And now, for the first time in a while, SKTelecom have recovered again through methodical play in the early to mid, or the mid transition, not the early to mid. But sometimes they do end up coming out ahead and they end up recovering a little bit in the early to mid transition that KT have showed such a dominance in over them. This is another replay. We're not going to watch it. Dragon coming up in 1 minute and 50 seconds. Another Infernal. So everything that KT should be doing right now should be about that Infernal Dragon. Surrender top tier 1. Control all the vision around this rectangle. Okay? Make sure that mid stays dark, and you know that the enemy team is not in a position to get Baron. Get the second Infernal Drake. After you get the Infernal Drake, you'll be in a position to tap mid and then unite with bottom, or you have the option to recall depending on your jungler camps. And again, Huni in a really good position. They get the turret, and now they back off. They know that Faker was up in top lane, but at the same time, you didn't have Pawn, who's having to be extremely careful. Okay, I like that. I like the Graves build. This is what I was talking about earlier. Black Cleaver into Sterax. See Smeb now going down to bottom, has to shove in the wave. You want to make sure that the wave is around this point, or this point. Draw them down to dragon so that they lose the top wave and it attacks 2 kills. They need to dance with them at dragon so that they lose the 2 kills up and top. Dance. Dance. You don't need blue. You don't need blue. Dance. Dance, dance, dance. No. No. No fight. No fight. Dance. 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 Dance, 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 dance. Dance. Yep. Push out the wave and then go back into that pocket. Push this wave back into the pocket. Incoming wave again. Push the wave back into the pocket. Rinse, wash, repeat. Dance. No. Don't shove. Okay. Okay. Dragon. Nice. Nice. No. No fight. No fight. Pawn bottom. Pawn bottom, eat jungle. 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 Pawn bottom, score, clear jungle. Deft, eat wolves, eat gromp. Pick up wave top, hawkshot baron, deny, reset. Smeb is more cost efficient with items than Jace at this stage of the game. So he should not have actually been in the split because that would have also enabled them to conserve teleport, and also Smeb alone would be able to dissuade. Now they're looking for a team fight. They absolutely light up Wolf. Mountain double infernal? No. No, 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 no. No, no, no. Pawn top, 4 mid, push out mid, draw attention, clear out vision, go, get red, recall, move out. Push lane, push lane. Lane is pushing because of tower. And because of levels. Macro errors. Things are actually starting to get a little bit bad where SKTelecom will have the temporary flip. And what I mean by the temporary flip is Pawn doesn't have like either the GA or the 6 items so that Faker can't just go on him. Like, it's not yet at that flip. There's that temporary phase where SKTelecom's team composition, especially relative to how the map looks, is going to be slightly better, but then KT end up taking the game back over. I will say, though, that KT are much more reliant on their summoner spells than SKTelecom. What are you guys doing? Oh, Mother of Heaven. Why? Why are you here? Hello? Yeah, SKT Baron. Yep. Faker shove mid, delay. They don't need you. Okay. He's doing what he's doing. Faker delay, Faker delay. Yep, Faker delays. Yep, Faker wolf delay, Faker wolf delay, Faker wolf delay. Faker wolf, yep, okay, good. Pawn shock blast, yep. Score up, score Ian to Baron. Smeb go forward. Never mind, they bat. They didn't want to coin flip the smite fight, I guess. That's basically what it comes down to. Because they don't have a way of actually getting onto score. Not like reliably. Wow, having to flash there to kill him feels bad, man. They do end up getting the kills though, which is really, really big. Oh! Seems like someone needs to go into the practice tool. Death now is up. They're going to shove in the waves. They're going to make sure that the lanes are dark. Bottom is actually shoving in, and it's not a lane that currently SKTelecom can actually make use of until they recall Huni. Now this is that point where SKT's team comp, once they complete the Guardian Angel onto Rengar, and once they complete the next item on Faker, it's where they have a temporary spike. It's a very, very small window. Also, Red Side Rumble and Jhin can dissuade Baron attempts by about a minute. Why? This almost seems like panic. Even if you get the Baron, you can still lose the fight, and that was still a coin flip in a way, even though your jungler had a 1-level advantage. Why? You're also going to lose, you're going to give over a Mountain Drake to SKT, and they have that Zed, you know, for the split push. And now look, even though you got the Baron, you have no minions for it. You have nothing. You're like, well, I have a degree, and then everyone turns to you and you're like, it's in art. You're like, it's a degree, it's like, it's in art. Like, fucking, what the fuck? KT has the Baron, right? But it's completely useless. Hello, may I take your order? Let me give you the carrot and the whip for all you art majors out there. Oh no, Pavlok's gonna give me the carrot and the whip. She's like, hi, actually, I just took offense to that statement, and I want to show you that I'm a Power Ranger. Like, no, you're not. Get the fuck off the screen. So anyways, if KT had the Baron up on a split pushing champion, it would actually still be worthwhile. Especially even more so if they had teleport. Oh man. Fucking Pavlok. Rotate up. This isn't a handshake. This is not a handshake that they come out ahead on. In terms of the Faker cannot blitz the base, but remember what I said earlier about equalizer curtain call. You can stall, but it doesn't look like they're actually going to go for it. Now they're recalling Faker. They're in the base. Interesting decision, actually, not to. There it is. There. Oh, fuck! God damn! But that also enabled Faker to keep going. This is something that I felt like they could have done a little bit sooner. Oh man, SKT. Oh, roasted. Faker's in the base. Oh, that was so cute though, what he tried. Watch this. Blank tries to flash to block the auto. Aw, what a fucking hero. Faker's gonna be able to get the turret. So this was SKTelecom having a miracle engage. So let's go all the, actually, maybe there's a replay. I'll actually talk during the replay. It's SKT having a miracle engage. And for everything to be lining up. And that Mountain Drake coming into, coming into play. No replay? No? Are you serious? I'm mad. All right, I have to go all the way back. Maybe I'll see Tasha too. All right, so take a look at this. See this? They don't need to get the inhibitor. They don't need it. It's already exposed. This means that if KT win a team fight somewhere, anywhere here, they have an open window. They don't need the inhibitor. It is a top lane inhibitor against a red side Rumble, red side Jhin, which means that if you have super minions in this lane and Baron comes up, it's still too easy for them to defend the lane right here and hold a phalanx inside of their red side jungle and knock away at the Baron. It's too easy. So the inhibitor doesn't actually do much, but the turret being down, that does everything. And so KT overextend incorrectly. They should get the turret and then back off. A little bit surprising, though, that SKTelecom didn't pull the trigger sooner, because if SKTelecom pull the trigger on the minion wave with the curtain call and the equalizer sooner, yes, they have another minion wave right here, but then I think that it at least guarantees that Faker gets the turret, although they don't get a miracle engage. This is where stuff gets really, really, really thin. And also, you're against double Infernal Drake plus Mountain Drake. So now, okay, I'm going to go ahead. So now KT rotating to the bottom half of the map. This is meant to pull away from the top half of the map, which is where they have the super minions coming in from. But also, they need to escort up these minion waves because this is where SKTelecom have these super minions coming in from. But then in addition to that, again, it detracts from the vision control that you're going to have around your own red side jungle and ultimately the Baron. Next dragon is going to be the Elder Drake. It's coming up in 2 minutes. SKTelecom are not really in a position to get it. Now SKT move onto the left-hand side of the map, and this is a maneuver that we see all the time. Why is SKT here? Well, it's to pull away vision from the right-hand side. SKTelecom, they realize that Elder Dragon to them is more valuable than Baron actually is. They can look to win a team fight with the Elder Drake, true damage and just the amplification and stuff. On that Zed, on the Rengar, on the Jhin, on the Equalizer from Rumble. Elder Dragon is a lot more impactful for them than it is for KT. Well, obviously KT wants it as well, and they have multiple Drakes, right? But for the most part, if you're looking at it from SKT's standpoint, they would much rather have Elder Dragon. Gold Store is extremely similar. SKTelecom have lost their window of opportunity. Because now you see Smeb transitioning into his very final item. Graves is just going to be an unkillable monster because you have so many combo-reliant champions. And the spike where before KT can get into that itemization, that's the small timing window. You just ult the fucking wave? That's the small timing window that SKTelecom's comp would have had, but we've already seen that both of these teams have phenomenal team fighting. Stealing away the red, that's actually really big. A little bit surprising that Deft, Score & Co. didn't put more priority on getting that, especially because of the Runon's Hurricane. They're escorting up the mid-minion wave, and then now, if you're KT, you should know that, okay, no Elder, no Baron, let's just have a straight up fight. Like, you can definitely go for that. Because we already talked about KT want the Baron, but SKTelecom should actually want the Elder. And now we're just going to have a wide open team fight. And because SKTelecom are the ones bringing it to KT, they don't have that proactive engage coming out of Smeb or out of Deft that would force SKTelecom to respond. And you can see that even still, it's still a struggle for SKT to actually win the team fights. We're going to play this at half speed. No, we'll play it at half speed. So what ends up happening here is current call expires, equalizer expires, Faker goes in, gets locked up, right? But as he gets locked up, Smeb ends up going down Huni, casts the Zanyas. You can see that Score is not in the best of positions. Shockblade actually misses onto Faker, and you have to entertain the Guardian Angels. They get onto Deft to protect him, but it was mostly KT splitting up. Another thing that someone should have done, Pawn or Score should have hit this so that Deft can actually kite into it. Even though the movement speed is going to be slowed, it doesn't really matter at this point in the game, because it's obvious that you can't actually kite away from the engage. And so that's something that could have happened in the heat of the moment. Very surprising that Score doesn't auto-attack it for Deft right here. They attack it, but it's a little bit late. And then because of that, Faker able to get in because Pawn was forced to go a little bit too far forward. Mata, though, probably going to go down. Yeah, Guardian Angel. And you can see that Bang going to get deleted by Score. Uses the heal. Faker, though, able to live just way too long. And that's primarily because take a look at something that's happening while this team fight is breaking out. Okay? Pawn has exhaust, and he's not using it. What is going on? He has exhaust and he's not using it, and then Smeb has flash, and in addition to that, Score has flash, Deft has flash. Now, imagine that they had not got blown up minutes prior, and this would, I mean, whatchamacallit, the inhibitor is just here, right? They did not get blown up minutes ago, and everyone has all summoners and whatnot. In this team fight, if you just kill them here, you win the game, because the inhibitor, right? Because Baron's open, Elder Dragon's open. You take both, you win. That's it. All that you need to do. Why they're trying to be so conservative with their summoner spells is beyond me. See Pawn up in the background. He still has that fucking exhaust. Holding it a million years. Guy's a hoarder. So now you have to recall. You have to deal with the minions inside of your base. And this is really unfortunate right now for Score. Even has to use a smite right there. But that's fine. He's going to have another charge up for Baron. It's not like he has red smite or blue smite. The other thing about that is they lost some items in that fight. They lost the Guardian Angel. Well, both teams did, actually. But Faker still has his Guardian Angel. And with all the summoners being removed, remember I said earlier, KT is much more reliant on having summoners than SKTelecom is. SKTelecom make the decision to go to the Elder Dragon because they know that this is the ticket to victory, not Baron. They don't need the Baron to win the game. Because even with the Baron, KT can still bring the engagement to them, even in the middle of minions. Because that's what KT's team composition is supposed to do. And if they bring the fight to them, and Bang and Huni are not positioned properly, or if the fight isn't too wide open of an area, then it ends up getting really, really bad and problematic, and Faker is going to have a hard time finding his way in onto KT while his carries somehow find a way to live. And Wolf is just going to be too hard-pressed to do everything. So they handshake the Elder for the Baron. This is the handshake earlier that I talked about would be advantageous for SKTelecom. Blank going in a little bit too far. Beautiful fucking equalizer from Huni, by the way. Beautiful equalizer. Faker going in. They have the Elder Dragon. And that's one of the really fucking big points right here. And this was actually like a Faker what moment, right? Because you see that he goes in, and then he takes his shadow back, even though he has Guardian Angel and Wolf was right there, and you have to know that they're still on cooldown. So now it ends up enabling actually Score to get away, because if Faker just sacrifices Guardian Angel, Score will die if Score does try to hypothetically kill Faker. He's not going to kill Faker. But Score's going to die. Without Score, then you can use the Elder Dragon, plus the fact that these minions would not get tapped by Baron to drive this minion wave straight up into the base, and then it's too difficult for KT to actually defend against it. Because all that they're going to end up having is they're going to have Smeb and they're going to have Pawn. At that point, Faker can actually be extremely slippery, and he can just go into the base and probably make it onto the inhibitor. Although that's a pretty thin line. But definitely some misplays by SKTelecom, but that was the power of the Elder Dragon. So now we're going to move forward, and the Elder Dragon buff has dissipated at this point. And so again, the edge should be in KT's favor. Or at least it seems like it's dissipated. I don't think it's saying that it's up here, right? Yeah, they don't have it. So the Elder Dragon buff is dissipated. Baron, though, still alive. Baron lasts a little bit longer. Don't know if anyone's running Runic Affinity, but I think that... Oh, wait, what? Wait, what? Oh, was Faker dead for Elder? Was Faker dead for Elder? I'm not even going to rewind. That's just weird. That's just super, super weird. So, okay. So they actually still have Elder Dragon. They don't need to do this. Don't need to do it if you're SKT. Don't need to do it. Thread the needle. Thread the needle. Escort the minion wave in, unite with Faker, take the team fight under the inhibitor while Elder Dragon still persists. Because top lane is perfect for you, mid lane is going to be a dark lane, bottom lane naturally is going to be a dark lane. Even though top lane inhibitor is exposed, you know that Smeb doesn't have teleport. So it's not like they can make any usage of it. Even if they could, Agragas is not the best champion to raise a inhibitor and then a turret on his own with, or at least provide enough damage on the turrets to enable his team to catch up to him and then clear the game out while the opponents just have a few seconds left on their death time. As you can see, KT trying their best to actually wave clear here. Still some mistakes, though, coming out from SKT, but it doesn't really matter because I think now at this point, yes, the Elder Dragon buff has disappeared. And so now they're going to send Faker up to top lane. And the problem here is that without that Elder Dragon, right, when all the Guardian Angel come back up for Smeb, you have the Guardian Angel now onto Depth. He doesn't really have that much damage. I think that the Hex Drinker is a little bit of a mistake because Rumble, he's not supposed to be able to get directly on top of you unless he uses his flash. Yes, his Equalizer is going to be there, but I feel like you either have the Bloodthirster or you have the Maw of Malmortius. I don't think that you really need both, especially not against SKT's team composition, which is meant to delete you. Zed gonna delete you. Rengar intended to delete you. You can't really fucking sustain through the crit of Bang, or, you know, if you're getting hit by curtain calls, you can't sustain through something unless you have minions nearby or unless there's a champion nearby. The Bloodthirster, I feel like, is a little bit of a mistake, and the fact that Ashe doesn't have any armor penetration against that Dead Man's Plate, look at all the Ninja Tab Eye stacks, the Ronduins onto Blank. It's really, really difficult for Deft to actually be a reliable source of damage, even though he is getting amplification via the Black Cleaver Shred, you know, that's being offered by Pawn and by Score. But now, SKTelecom looking to take a fight in mid. Here comes the curtain call, and this is a scenario where, okay, there it is, Smeb able to defuse the situation, but you can see that KT keep holding like a phalanx and when they're trying to fight, and that shouldn't be how they approach the team fights. Smeb should always be coming in from an angle because you know that Mata is always going to be able to defend any of the carries that SKT would try to hard engage onto. And even if you would make the argument that Smeb would then be off by himself and then you have the, you know, on the hunt, etc., he's too tanky and too slippery, in addition to the fact that he heals way too fucking much with his passive, that just one or two members would be able to take him down. You can see both teams probably actually getting on nerves because, I mean, this is basically the equivalency of a World's Finals in terms of gameplay. Very, very few teams would be able to probably reach this level of team fighting mechanics, not even just the early and the macro. Oh my god, okay, the Equalizer. And this is what I was talking about. You don't need that inhibitor. It doesn't actually do anything. It really doesn't. Even though we're talking about the game timer being almost 47 minutes and the minions are really strong, it doesn't mean that you want to get into a position like this where, again, you're turtled up, you're holding, or you're inside of a perfect angle for the Equalizer. Yeah, Bang doesn't have a curtain call available to him, and he doesn't really have that much mana, but you can see that SKTelecom, because of the angle that KT are taking, they're able to turn the fights. And you can see Faker now looming in the distance, doesn't quite go in. They almost take down Mata. They finally take down Mata. Smeb re-engages. And you can just see how bloody the fight is. You know, it ends up being a 2 for 2. They get they get some of the Guardian Angels. Deft ends up living, but Deft would be able to output so much more damage. He could, if they're actually going to hold this like phalanx formation as they choose to fight, Deft may as well just fucking sell his Berserker Greaves. To be completely honest, just sell the Berserker Greaves and get Last Whisper. Just get Last Whisper so that you penetrate the armor. Do something. There's no reason to have the build that he actually has right now. Definitely a feels bad man moment. Mata could have even itemized differently. That's something that we didn't even really get to talk about too much. Mata could have definitely itemized differently to make it so that Deft didn't have to itemize the way that he did. That doesn't matter so much. Now SKTelecom making sure that their bottom lane is pushing. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit because there's obviously no activity occurring on the map. Baron coming up in a minute. This is obviously more valuable for KT than it is for SKTelecom. But now that we're at this stage of the game, minions are actually, they are extremely scary on their own. And now obviously some people are thinking that, well, that doesn't mean the inhibitor minions are scarier like the super minions. No, it doesn't. Because again, it's on the part of the map that SKTelecom need to defend from because of the proximity from the red side jungle to the top lane and what it means for their ability to stop that top lane inhibitor from being down. So now it looks like what KT are going to do is they're going to try to pull SKTelecom over to the bottom half of the map, despite though Huni does have teleport, and what this is doing is it's enabling Huni to actually shove the lane out indefinitely until KT makes a decision. The problem is the Elder Dragon's not coming up anytime soon. So yes, they're pulling SKTelecom away from the map, but what they're also doing is they're enabling the summoner spells to actually come back up. And while that is good for them in theory, the stall and their inability to actually get onto the base or threaten anything is going to be extremely problematic. And so yeah, the Baron's coming up and they're making SKTelecom stay on the bottom half of the map. And you can see now They're not making any usage of the fact that they have that teleport on Smeb, and it's just sort of like, why? Why is Smeb not mid right now? Why is Smeb not escorting a mid minion wave so that you have 2 lanes going dark? Why are you tunneling on bottom, you know, when Baron exists, and you know that that's a very clear window? And they keep holding this 5-man formation, and you have to wonder, is it because they don't know the other options that are available to them? Are they not seeing it? Or are they so confident in their team fighting, which then again, I mean, that's still flawed in itself, because we as spectators can point out that there is clearly other things that they could be doing. Now, they capitalize on the fact that Faker and Bang went into mid lane. They get a little bit of turret damage, and you can see that they constantly keep endlessly pushing this wave up into the base, but we've seen them lose fights from this formation before. And the other thing this is doing is it's stalling out the game in order for Elder Dragon to spawn. They're going to get the turret, but the turret doesn't actually matter. The turret is irrelevant, because if they win the team fight, they get the turret anyway. And so now they get caught out, and again, they're holding that phalanx. And what do? See? It's always going to be like this. It's always going to be like this. You can't let SKTelecom bring the fight to you. The problem is that, again, KT are so heavily reliant on their summoners that without that flash engagement tool from Smeb, everything is going to end up looking horrific. And yes, right now, I mean, a million people are probably looking at that, not a million, obviously, but, you know, oh, the Nexus turret went down because they got that top inhibitor. Well, congratulations. The fight ends up going on a lot longer. SKTelecom come out ahead on it, and what this should end up meaning is that they should be able to convert this into picking up the minion waves that are inside of their base, converting this into a Baron play, and now KT is not going to have the type of neutral objective that they so desperately needed to end the game. A little bit of RNG there, actually, and now the teleport coming in from Huni to lock up the turret. Wolf kept on janitor duty. Doesn't actually shoot the minion wave, or the minion into the fountain. Lots of death timers up right now. This even maybe could have been done differently as well. It's like score against the world right now, but obviously they don't have the minions to push on, but they're going to be able to get Baron. But then in addition to getting Baron, now SKTelecom have the Baron, which then means that they can tap the minion waves to start shoving out into top, into bottom, and you have the teleport available on Smeb, but we already talked about that Smeb is not on a champion that, you know, an open Nexus is extremely scary. If you had teleport on Pawn, that would be extremely scary. The other thing is you're talking about, you know, teleporting to a ward. Well, a Baron recall is going to be able to match that. Looks like Score's actually trying to go in to try to get a steal off onto the Baron. You can see that KT desperately trying to get there, and now SKTelecom wisely disengage. You can see Score trying to go super, super ham, and KT might have overstayed their welcome, or that they might have actually just played this poorly. And so, you know, basically when you're looking at this, the equalizer mispositioned. They're kiting this a little bit, or not kiting it, but they're doing it a little bit incorrectly. And you have to look at everything that leads up to the buildup of this, right? Let's take a look. Faker, does he really need to be getting the blue buff right now? No, he doesn't need to be wasting that time, right? Doesn't need to be wasting the time on the blue buff. He could be at the Baron, dishing out that damage. Because look at this. How much damage are they actually losing by not having Faker inside of the Baron pit earlier, right? Now Faker ends up running away completely, and they cast down the equalizer, but it caused them to have to then turn their attention back onto Baron, and then that little bit of time plays into this, and now they're all flashing away, and it really looked like at this point, or it looks like, you know, KT is actually going to win the game because they got Blink. The problem, though, is that with the Baron minions, the curtain call, and the equalizer, had they gotten Huni, he was the key, because we've already seen numerous times that the Rengar or the Tahm Kench, they aren't the really problematic champions. It's the equalizer in addition to the curtain call combo. Look at what KT is doing right now. They can easily get this, they can get the inhibitor, right? Get the inhibitor, 45 seconds on Rengar, okay? You have bottom lane pushing in your favor, mid lane not pushing in your favor. So come up here, get this, get the inhibitor, all right? Move into the base, stop holding the phalanx. Look at that engage by Smeb. He ends up messing it up, actually. And he also uses it on Faker, which is not a target that he should have been using it on. Get the inhibitor, and then once you get the inhibitor with the 30-second death timer on Rengar, you can still back out, run away, maybe not through this pit, maybe you break up a little bit, run down to Elder Dragon, take the Elder Dragon because you have an exposed inhibitor down in bottom. And then the super minion waves against an open Nexus is extremely scary, because then what it means is you take the Elder Dragon, you recall, you come up, you take the Elder Dragon, you sustain up because you have the lifesteal, etc. Maybe you send, I don't know, Def to pick up the red buff or something. You move, you get the blue buff, or you have Def to actually pick up the red buff on his way down to Elder Dragon because this one's up. Then you move up bottom lane as a unit of 5, right? You have Smeb stay off onto the right-hand side, right? And he's going to have flash available to him. You have him bottom slam through, or you have him, you know, hug around, etc. And then you have him threaten the pincer, right? You get this inhibitor, and now all of a sudden you're waiting for the super waves, and you have Elder Drake. Can't lose the 5v5. Huge, 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 huge. Like, if they get Bang, the game ends. Bang is the fucking... Oh, man. Bang's the problem. Bang ends up living. It changes everything, because that's what doesn't enable Score to go harder sooner. You can see that Deft ends up picking him up, Deft being really indecisive. I almost feel like at this point, if Deft just turned his attention, instead of attacking Wolf, to hitting the Nexus, they would be able to win that way, because Smeb has Faker tied up, and then you know that you have the whatchamacallit, the Guardian Angel respawn on Score. And they were just way too indecisive. I'm truly curious about what happens with the Nexus, but they take a team fight that is not a surefire victory, and now Rengar ends up coming up. Huni's down, doesn't even have teleport, but now they're able to run up mid lane. Wolf trying desperately to defend the turret in bottom. That's even another alternative. He could have taken this turret, moved down, not taken the team fight, or used the Gragas ultimate to disengage them, try to get the inhibitor, and then just break away, disengage, move down through blue to get the blue and get the Elder. That's not as optimal as getting the turret, moving down, getting the red buff, moving into mid lane, eating the wave, moving into the blue side jungle, getting the blue, getting the Elder Dragon, and then using, as a unit, a 5v5 up mid lane with the inhibitor, and then you do a dance with Gragas off on the side, because now you have super minions coming up top lane against an exposed inhibitor. Yes, you have an inhibitor down in mid, and that means that if you do lose the fight, you lose the game, but that doesn't really matter because you still have the Nexus turret. So a double Nexus turret, because Score was able to save it before, and Faker wasn't able to raise the turret. So now this ends up happening, and Faker and Blank are on the Nexus turrets, and you can take a look at the death timers. Mata's going to come up. It's not really going to matter at this point. You can see SKTelecom have a huge sigh of relief. And again, it's just another example that SKTelecom's macro in the mid to late game is on another level compared to KT's, even though KT is able to so consistently outplay them. The problem is, though, is that there are mechanics inside of the game which then can accelerate a comeback, such as the rubber banding, the comeback gold, the fact that the minions come into you, all of that type of stuff. And so SKTelecom, with SKTelecom with an inferior composition managed to stall out the game, and they managed to slowly but surely outplay KT at multiple different points and end up getting the win. So it was a really good series to watch. From a team fighting perspective, their team fighting is probably the best in the world on both of these teams. Some of the macro things that KT or not necessarily SKT in this regard, because KT were the ones that had initiative with everything, and it was more so that SKTelecom didn't have a say in what was going to happen. It was more so on their ability to defend and deflect the attempts that KT would try to do from a mechanical standpoint, but then also intelligently using the equalizer and the curtain call and any sort of Zed assassinations, etc., in order to constantly get out the game until that item spike where SKTelecom would be slightly stronger, and then you wait for the Elder Dragon in addition to the Baron to be on the map, and then they can come back that way. KT seemed a little bit over-eager with their advantage at multiple points. They seemed this way in Game 2 and Game number 1, and they didn't take it as slow and steady as they could have to suffocate SKTelecom and make it so that the percentage chance of them winning the game would be slightly higher, because when we're talking about this level of play, when you're talking about fighting for rank 1 in your specific region, right, the LCK, when you're talking about tournaments and wins, those directly tie in with your career, and ultimately at the end of the day, all that matters is that you win, not how you win. It doesn't matter if it's 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, 70 minutes, it just matters that you win in the end, no matter through what means that's going to be achieved. And so KT willingly handshaking on things that were obviously not as favorable to other macro maneuvers that they had at their disposal is a little bit worrying. Now, I will conclude this with saying that the rematch, which is on Sunday, which I'm extremely excited to cast, it's going to be interesting to see what happens if SKTelecom go with an aggressive comp or a mid-range composition. What happens to KT in that regard? Because we've seen KT blunder, in the mid-game and late game before against other teams in the LCK. And this seems to be a common trend with them that I don't think that they're going to be able to fix in 3 days. So I think that what's going to happen in 2 days is KT probably might come with the same exact prepared strategy. I'm very doubtful that they're going to be able to have adapted and picked up and morphed their mid to late game, because that is such a difficult part of the game to actually learn and understand. It takes so much time to understand it on that level. And I think that the difference between SKT and KT is actually night and day when you really look at some of the things that are happening inside of these games when it gets to that point. I think SK Telecom will take the games on Sunday. Obviously, there were points where SK Telecom should have just outright lost. Fights could have gone the other way. KT very may well get them in another position like that on Sunday, and then that time the fights are going to go in KT's favor. If that does end up happening, KT could take the set. What I think will be the real, true rematch will be in playoffs, or it'll be the World semifinals or Worlds. No, I'm kidding. TSM's going to knock out SK Telecom in groups, let's be honest, guys. But I think that that'll be when the real rematch occurs, either inside of playoffs in a few weeks from now, or the World semifinals or the World finals. I think that these two teams will collide, and that'll be the real testament. Because again, KT, a very new team. SK Telecom, not so much. Yes, they have some new players, but they also have a lot of veterans. And then their coaching staff has been with them for so long. KT, they're definitely looking like they have the foundation and what's necessary to eventually rise up and just squash SK Telecom, unless SK Telecom can pick up their early game weakness, which is their most notable weakness right now. All right, guys, so thanks for watching these VOD reviews.